Losing a loved one is an incredibly trying time. And the last thing that you want to deal with is bureaucratic red tape. And for something so simple as a death certificate, because that death certificate, you have to have it for a lot of things. And it's an incredible story. Welcome to Behind the Investigation. I'm Better Call Harry, here with my favorite, Sierra Cummings. And I want you to tell us about this because I've received complaints about delayed death certificates before, but you dug a lot deeper.
Yeah, and this is a little different. I mean, so many of us have gotten those complaints about the death certificates where you assume, okay, maybe there's a backlog with the local medical examiner's office or the local coroner, depending on what county you're in. This was not quite that. And as you mentioned, you need the death certificate. Even though it seems so simple, it is a critical document to handle assets, insurance, debt, all kinds of things. So if you don't have it, it kind of stalls so many processes, including your grief. And that's what happened with this family. They're in the middle of grieving their mother, and yet they're having to do an investigation to figure out what is taking this death certificate so long. They reached out to Atlanta News First Investigates to let us know what was going on. And in the time we were digging into their situation, they ultimately end up getting the death certificate 2.5 months after their mom had passed away. So here is that story on death certificates. What are you going to miss most about her?
Wow. Having fun with her, laughing with her, poking fun at her. My mother believed in me more than anybody else. So I miss that.
Roberta Gardner says her greatest supporter was her mom, Nancy Young. They'd been working on this puzzle together, but since Mom's death on March 11th, the project sat still. Until now, just as Roberta is finally putting together the pieces of a puzzling case, the more than 2-month delay of her mother's death certificate.
Shocked. Completely shocked.
The problem begins where the police investigation ends. On March 11th, Gwinnett County police arrived to the home. After checking around, interviewing family, learning Nancy had seizures and dementia, officers decide this death is not suspicious, telling relatives.
It appears natural. There's no signs of foul play or anything like that. So, were you calling the medical examiner? Hello?
Police call the Gwinnett County Medical Examiner's office while on scene. The agency agrees this is a natural death. But the question the staffer asks the officer next will change the course of how the death certificate is handled.
She does,
Because this was a natural death,
but she takes medication for years.
because Nancy had a physician that she'd recently seen for prescribed medication, this is now an unattended death. In Georgia, unattended death is when a doctor has treated a patient for potentially life-threatening illness within 60 days prior to the patient's passing. So in circumstances like Nancy's, Georgia law explains the death certificate is not the local medical examiner's responsibility. Instead, the doctor must sign it within 72 hours. But days
We still don't have any death certificate.
turned into weeks of waiting.
But we also are being held responsible for figuring out how to get it and how to get this legal document signed.
2 months later, still no signed death certificate.
You obviously want to focus on grieving your mother. Like there's a loss that just came through your family, but you're out here doing an investigation, for lack of better words.
Yes. It was crippling. It was crippling for me. The medical examiner's office said, we're advocating for you. You should know that that doctor is legally bound to sign your mother's death certificate. And the fact that he won't is a problem, and we're going to go after his license.
Atlanta News First Investigates found since June 2024, the Georgia Medical Board received 60 complaints against doctors who failed to sign death certificates.
I needed to grieve, but I also needed to do the legal things that I needed to do to make sure that the insurance company didn't come after me, and to also begin to close the chapter. And I feel like, you know, that some of that is the first step, and I couldn't make those steps.
Often, doctors refuse to sign because the patient was not physically in their hospital at the time of death. But that's misinterpretation of the law, according to some local medical examiners. What's worse, the Gwinnett County ME wrote in this recent report, a physician refuses because he or she does not face significant repercussions. The added burden of subpoenaing medical records, reviewing records, and signing death certificate falls upon the medical examiner, an already overburdened, understaffed system. The National Association of Medical Examiners estimating the U.S. only has 750 MEs when 1,400 are needed. The effects felt by Roberta.
It's shaken me to my core. I realize with every part of me that death is part of the continuity of care, but I don't think the doctors believe that.
The delays in this case only delayed her grieving process, too.
She loved it here.
But now, Roberta takes us to a nearby park, to the beloved bench where her mom was most at peace. This day, Roberta finds peace here, too, because the doctor officially signed the death certificate May 27th, 2.5 months after Nancy's passing.
We do feel betrayed by the doctors who did not care. It felt like a business transaction. And that once my mother passed, it was hands off.
You know, that's really something to see. And it is a long time to wait, especially because you're trying to deal with finances. But what do the doctor's office have to say about this?
You might notice in this story, watching, listening, we don't exactly name the doctor's office. And it was an editorial decision because we felt like this was bigger than just one doctor or one local doctor's office. This is more about a larger systemic issue. But we did reach out to that doctor's office. We've got to reach out to all sides. And we called them, and ultimately the person in charge ended up emailing me, and they told me via email they signed a death certificate when they got it. They point the finger at the Gwinnett medical examiner's office and says, we didn't get the death certificate for 2 months. And so once we got it, we signed it and sent it back. Meanwhile, the family kind of argues against that point and when I talked to the daughter in the story, Roberta, she says, I physically went down to that doctor's office with an investigator, and we begged them to sign the death certificate. And they told us they were not signing the death certificate despite us being physically in that office. When I followed back up the email with the doctor's office about that, they said they would try to find records of phone calls or that situation, and we have not heard back after that latest reach out. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy there, but ultimately it was a long wait for the family in their eyes.
I know I'd be furious if that happened to me, if I lost a loved one. I mean, is there anything that can be done? Are there any requirements at the state level? I mean, where can this go?
We point out in that story, because I was wondering, okay, is this a one-off? Is this a couple times? We point out in that story that just in the last year alone, dozens of doctors have had complaints filed against them after they chose not to sign the death certificate. And I want to point out here that these doctors, at least from what we can tell anecdotally, are often saying, hey, liability issue. If this person is passing away and they're not physically in my doctor's office or physically at my hospital at the time they take their last breath, maybe I'm a little concerned putting my name on the death certificate because I wasn't actually there at the moment of passing. And what if, there's just a gap in communication, a gap in what actually happened. So I get that. That's the medical professionals' opinion in all of this. But when we talk to the state, they let us know, the state medical board, they said that they are partnering with the Department of Public Health and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, the GBI, to train and host meetings with doctors in the state to inform them of what the law requires them to do. So we'll see if that helps solve this issue, but the medical board is aware of the ongoing problem and they feel like collaboratively training and educating doctors could improve the situation.
Well, I know you'll continue to follow this story. It really is something. And again, it may not seem like a lot of time, a month or 2 months, but you know what? For anybody who's going through the loss of a loved one, every day means something. Thank you so much, Sierra. A great story. And
Thank you.
I know you'll stay on top of this. Thank you for tuning into Behind the Investigation with Atlanta News First Investigates. For more on this story, go to atlantanewsfirst.com and click on the ANF Investigates tab. You can listen to more award-winning investigations wherever you get your podcast by searching Behind the Investigation with Atlanta News First. And tune in Sundays for an hour-long episode of Uncovered, where we highlight some of our biggest investigations that impact our communities.